My name is Kristen Wright. I am Miss World Australia, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. It's Adrian from the Pageant Project, and my special guest for this evening is a familiar face, Kristen Wright, who is Miss World Australia 2022. Kristen, how are you?
I'm excellent. Happy Valentine's Day as well. I didn't even think it was, it's come around so quickly. I can't believe we're already in February.
Yeah, I've been chatting. We've been chatting to each other on and off, obviously. How long ago was our last interview? Because I feel like, and for those of you watching at home, if you have questions, put them in the comments and I'll pass them on to Kristen. But since our last chat, so much has happened, and that's over the festive period where a lot of people took, a lot of time off. How long ago was our last interview?
I'm going to guess it was May because I was crowned last April. So it's nearly been a whole year, which is quite surreal considering how quickly,
Wow.
the end of 2022 kind of happened. So I would say close to a year.
Wow. It's been it's been a year already. That it's been quite a ride. There's been lots happening, and we'll dig into it. So, first things first, if there's anyone watching who isn't familiar with your pageant story, why don't you tell them how you got involved in pageantry to begin with?
Yeah, of course. So I entered Miss World Australia back in 2019. It feels surreal to say it. And due to COVID-19, yeah, due to COVID-19,
2019.
yeah, it's been postponed over the years, and therefore the Australian national final was kind of pushed back, understandably, of course. And the national final for Australia happened last April. I was fortunate enough to be crowned your Miss World Australia for this year, meaning that I'm representing our beautiful country at Miss World this May, which has just been announced that it's happening in the United Arab Emirates. So I'm really excited for that. They are going to finalise the city. I think it's going to be Dubai, but we will see what happens. So, how I got into pageantry, I actually had a suggestion from my cousin. She thought that I should give Miss World Australia a crack, see what happens. Speaking brutally honest, entering it, I didn't really know what to expect nor understand the pageant itself.
Mm.
Now, as I've had kind of years to work through not only the Australia system, but now prepare for Miss World, I understand its values and the impact that it has on an international level, especially with their director, Julia Morley. She is the director of the international pageant. Her work that she has done across the world in terms of humanitarian aid work is incredible. And so I strongly feel that Miss World Australia, let alone Miss World, aligns with my values, and being able to create platforms and projects to implement within communities to create positive change is kind of the overall summary of what Miss World is about, and that falls under the category or label, so to speak, of beauty with a purpose.
I think we should probably dig into beauty with a purpose just for a bit, because it is, in my mind, something that does make Miss World stand out as a pageant, because the charitable work is very much up front.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talk about beauty with a purpose, but Miss World actually does it. And that project is sort of centerpiece. It is an advocacy, but it has to be a very practical one, and you have to show that you've actually
Yeah.
been putting in the hard work. So how, now that 2019, that was before COVID. I don't remember what life was like before then. But how fulfilling has it been? What sort of growth, what sort of journey have you been on with all the work you've done for your advocacy? I know obviously we've got Educate, Resuscitate. You've just returned from bush to beach. You published The Yellow Bow, which is your book. But just give us the overall, what's that journey for you been like over the last 4 years?
So when I founded Educate Resuscitate, it was when it really clicked what Miss World, let alone Miss World Australia, was about. And that was back in 2021. So it was kind of peak pandemic. Well, nationally, our drowning rates increased. We've had the horrific floods. And I just remember seeing this kind of news reporter in the midst of it saying how, and they were interviewing one of our Life-Saving Australian members in the midst of it, saying how devastating it is because of COVID. Swim schools have closed. We've had the natural disasters. And watching that, it kind of clicked because, you know, we do talk about beauty with a purpose with Miss World, but it can be quite hard where you can, you know, look for something that you can provide to someone else to kind of benefit and create positive change within a community. It can be really hard establishing those projects from the start.
Mhm.
Seeing that news reporter and the statistics that they were throwing out, which were horrific at the time, I was like, okay, how can I involve myself in this to help, basically? And that's when Educate Resuscitate was born. My background as a scuba diving instructor, and growing up on the Mornington Peninsula, I was always around water, and therefore it was really instilled within me from a young age the importance of first aid and CPR training. And it's not part of our high school curriculum. So I was kind of like, okay, well, how can I work this in? Because the skills to save a life are universal at the end of the day. And that's where I drafted the idea of, you know, okay, what if I go to primary schools, high schools, youth centres, as well as workplaces, and hold CPR and first aid seminars, as well as water safety where it's applicable. So for the younger kids. And my passion for first aid and CPR definitely was influenced by a dear friend who I lost during a scuba diving accident. She was the reason why I became an instructor and a huge inspiration for me. And she was always so passionate about the importance of first aid and CPR and her students learning those skills as well, not just the dive professionals around her. And so the project is dedicated in her honour. And so since founding the project, I have been travelling to schools and workplaces and hosting these CPR and first aid seminars. As you just mentioned before, I just returned from New South Wales from the Bush to Beach camp, which was the most incredible experience. And the project has kind of flourished from there. That is also what the book relates to, my children's book called The Yellow Bow. It is again in dedication to my beautiful friend. But the kids of Osborne Primary School, while we were doing a first aid and CPR seminar, they also illustrated the pages in this book. So there's a really special meaning behind it. It is about a diver T-Rex. And the reason why it's a diver T-Rex is because her nickname was T-Rex when I was diving with her, because she had very short arms and we had to alter all of her wetsuits. My boss was very creative when coming up with our nicknames, as you know mine. And so the reason for the book with the primary school is it's very heavy topics talking about CPR and first aid, especially when you have a group of 12, 13-year-olds. And so I wanted the illustration and the creative element to be the book so that it lightens the mood and they see it as a positive aspect rather than negative, because in reality it can be quite brutal. But in saying that, it was motivating them to learn more about it, considering they had a creative element added to the project of illustrating those pages. So that's my book, but it's just absolutely flourished. I have 2 more schools coming up as well for February, March, 2 more school visits, and then I'm going to try and squeeze in another workplace one before I head off to Miss World. But it's such a special, how do I describe it? I think because it's quite I would say it's a project that has made me some very intimate bonds with people because they've shared their stories of people they know or potentially themselves where they have had to admit CPR. Or first aid in a serious matter, and it's kind of connected us through this storytelling. So I feel really privileged to be able to travel to all these different locations, sharing knowledge and sharing the universal skills on how to save a life.
Well, you sent me through some footage, which we'll take a look at in just a second, from bush to beach. But let me ask you this. I mean, the friend that you dedicated the whole project to, how do you think she would feel seeing how much you've done now?
I I think she would be proud. I just got chills. I think she would be proud, but I also know her sense of humor, and she'd be like, "Keep going! Like, what are you doing? There's no rest days. Come on, like, keep going." Because that was her mentality. She just absolutely was amazing at applying herself to her goals. And that's something that I hope to kind of live up to because I was really inspired how dedicated she was and how much she believed in herself. And we throw around words like failure, success, and judgment, and I think something that doesn't get talked about enough, or something that she definitely instilled within me that was the biggest realization, is that when you take those words and start looking at them in more of a clinical sense, they're all words where the definition is down to the individual.
Yeah.
You can decide what you classify as a failure, you can decide what you classify as a success, and often, your failures are someone else's success. And she really instilled within me that mentality, which has allowed me to believe in myself. But I think she would be proud of me, and I think she believes in me as she believed in herself. But I just know she'd be like, "Keep going. What are you doing? No rest days."
A very Australian quality to have, that not getting too big ahead, not getting not getting too full of yourself, as we might say, and just keep carrying on. But let's start with the news article on you, or the news story on you. Now, for those of you watching at home aren't familiar, this is from Channel 10, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen, but it had Channel 10 in the bottom left, so I'm going with Channel 10. And this is a news story that ran, and I was watching the clip, and then I saw, oh, that looks like Kristen swimming in a pool behind it. So I'll play it through for you guys, and then it gives a good overview as to what the project involves. So let's have a look.
Making their first ever dip in the ocean, all a reward for going to school.
They drove all day and all night, more than 12 hours, to go to the beach.
Lovely to see you all.
Many for the first time in their lives. Racing to see the big blue up close.
They come from Bawarrina, Gadooga and Willamarringal.
This is Bush to Beach, this year bringing school kids from the far northwest of New South Wales to Sydney's sparkling shores.
I've never been in the water yet too.
Are you excited?
Yes, because I feel like I'm not touching a seahorse.
Kyari and all his mates were soon in the deep end, learning to snorkel with Miss World Australia, Kristen Wright.
This camp has been postponed for 2 years due to COVID, and so that it's finally happening, it feels absolutely surreal, and we're all excited.
I saw fishes and I saw two little baby crabs.
This an unforgettable reward for their diligence at school.
Look, it brings confidence, self-esteem, which is so important. That's the reason I started it up. I wanted the kids to attend school, gain an education, but be as best as they can be.
They're absolutely loving being in the water, and it's extra special because these kids come from communities that have been struck hard by floods. Some of them were cut off for at least 4 weeks. Today, discovering treasures of the deep.
It's a little bit of opal, if you can see it.
Enriching their...
Was that the end?
I didn't think
I thought
it
there
was.
was a little bit more to it. Hang on.
water, and it's extra special. Some
Of opal, if you can see it.
enriching their...
Outback kids.
Oh,
Well,
maybe it cut.
It cut off there for some reason. We got most of it, thankfully. But I think for people watching from overseas, they wouldn't have realized that in Australia you can drive for 12 hours and still be
Yeah.
pretty much in the same state and in the same state. So it was a very, very long drive. But can you tell me more about the because was that the founder who was speaking about the program?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was
Jack.
saying something about the combination of school. I didn't quite, because he spoke about it quite briefly, but is there some combination of, okay, so if you attend school on a consistent basis, then you get to go to the water? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, it is. And so Jack is the founder of Bush to Beach. He founded Bush to Beach back in 2006. So there's been quite a few camps happening since he started it. However, for the last 2 years, the camp was also postponed due to COVID. How it works is the children are nominated by Jack works with the teachers and the elders of the communities, and the kids basically have to be nominated to go on this camp. The First Nations kids, we took 40 of them this time. There's always between 40 to 50 First Nations children. And then the ages range from about 8 to 15. So it's quite a vast age range, but I think that's awesome because they're getting to mix with older and younger kids, and not only different ages, but be in a kind of different environment as well. It's a 3-day camp. We did so many different activities. We did surfing, taekwondo lessons. The last night we had a disco. We did a first aid and CPR seminar. I stayed with the kids at the designated kind of accommodation. We were all in different cabins. And then as per that news story, I was blessed with being able to show these kids how to snorkel this year, thanks to the donations of masks and snorkels. So we did it at, was it the South Narrabeen pool in Sydney? So it was,
that's about right.
Yeah, forgive me, I'm still learning Sydney suburbs. It was an ocean pool for those who haven't seen them before. Basically, it's like a concrete wall blocking off the actual ocean, but it's still filled with ocean. And in that pool, we saw some baby turtles, we saw hermit crabs, little schools of fish. It was absolutely perfect, but it's in a safe, confined environment, and so the kids can really learn how to use masks and snorkels and explore underwater without, the pressure of also orientating rips and currents and swell and other things. So it was an absolutely surreal camp. I have become quite close with a lot of the kids, and since then their families have found me, emailed me, and I'm going to become pen pals with these kids because yes, the camp is important in terms of instilling and growing their self-esteem, confidence, and belief within themselves. But for me, the after part of it, where you stay in contact with them, check in on them, that is just as important, if not even more important, and continuing those connections. Jack and myself and a few of the volunteers are planning a trip out there to see the kids, meet the family, but also then have the kids introduce us to their homes and their fun activities. And a lot of them fish, so they want to show us the fish traps out there, which I'm like a bit hesitant of because I don't fish, but we'll just go with it. And it just was the most magnificent camp, Adrian. Like I felt so blessed every day to be there with those kids, and the bonds that I made with them. I knew I'd get along well with them. They're bright kids, they're bubbly, they're chatty, but how closely we bonded really took me off guard. I was like a mess on the last day when we were saying goodbye to each other, which I just was like overcome with love and emotion for them. And it had been such a beautiful 3 days of experiencing different environments together. And I think that's where the emotion came from, and the love, and the kids by the end of the camp were calling me Aunt Chris, which is, I felt very humbled to be called that. And we all were screaming at each other, "Love you," and everything. It was the most amazing camp. I've already said to Jack, I was like, I'm sorry, like, you're stuck with me now. You need to sign me up for the next 5 years. But
They won't be able to get rid of you.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% there every single year. And I hope to keep the snorkeling kind of class as a regular thing as well for the kids. And yeah, Jack's plan is to take it to kind of all the states around Australia. So I hope it gets to that point, and I'll do what I can to help him get there, because this program deserves to be Australia-wide. It truly does. And there was on the last day, on the Sunday, the last day of like beach activities, we did nippers with the nippers kids. And oh my goodness, these First Nation kids, you know, we all just mixed up in ages, so it was all fair. These kids had never done flags, boards, none of the races and everything. My gosh, they absolutely smashed it out of the park. All of them went in 110%, giving it their best shot. And my gosh, they were quick. I'm like trying to film all the kids, and like literally the nippers and the First Nations kids were just like, I completely missed filming half of them, but it was just really beautiful to see them all getting involved in the different activities.
Yeah, it's hard as someone who's grown up in Australia to fathom the idea that you would have potentially grown up and never seen the sea by the time you're 10, 11, or 12 years old, or however old some of those kids were. But I think importantly, Kristen, just for people watching at home or listening who aren't familiar, you've used the term First Nations people or First Nations children a few times. Can you just let the people know what exactly you're referring to? Because I think that's very important as well in the context of Australia and who we are.
Yeah, of course. So Jack broke down to me the different terminology, because he has worked with a lot of First Nations peoples over his career, not only with Bush to Beach, but with Variety Australia. And I use the correct terminology of First Nations as it refers to our traditional owners of our land, so the Aboriginal traditional owners. Indigenous by definition, by dictionary, means anyone born in that country. So I, out of respect, prefer First Nations. It's referring to basically the traditional owners of our land here in Australia.
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar, White Australia, if I can call it that, was founded, I believe, in 1778. So I think it's about 250 years old, whereas the First Nations people were here, I think, 40,000, like tens of thousands of years previous to that. So there's some magnitudes of order of difference in how long those two civilizations have been around. I just thought that's important to cover because not everyone will be aware of that from overseas. Let's have a look at some of the nippers attempting CPR on these dummies. Now, the video is only 8 seconds long, so we can watch the whole thing through, and then I can mute it and you can walk us through what's actually happening here.
Put your hands on. Ready? Go. Go.
So what's happening here? Can you explain? So you've got a dummy on the floor. What's a dummy for? And then what's actually happening with the chest compressions?
Yeah, so we also got the Slurpees in the background. We like to make the CPR in first.
Actually, yeah, I can see that the kids in the background seem quite engrossed in their Slurpees.
So this was in line with the Life Saving Club up there as well. We kind of all got involved. I jumped in because the CPR and first aid training I'm familiar with, and also it does relate to my project Educate, Resuscitate. So these CPR dummies, they basically are practice for CPR, getting the correct rhythm as well as the correct depth. CPR, these dummies, they basically, when you hit the accurate depth of a compression, they click. These two beautiful kids in these videos, they are only 8 years old, and they're,
He's had enough now.
they're still growing. They're still growing. They're quite small, and they struggled to get the click. And so with the current clip that's playing, I'm motivating. I'm, getting the rhythm going with tapping my thighs. If you know the song "Staying Alive," potentially, that is the correct rhythm of CPR. So if you sing that song in your head, that's your rhythm you want to stick to.
Okay.
And so we're just practicing getting depth. As you can see, he's got his whole body over the top of it, really trying to make that click, and he did get it. I'm so proud of him. And then the first clip of the young girl putting her hands on top of mine, we're doing it together. So I'm showing her how deep it should be in order to get that click, as if it was simulating doing CPR on someone. And she felt really good after the click, after she, did it properly. So I'm so proud of them both, because they're still growing, and those dummies can be quite hard depending on who's used them before you. It can be quite hard to hit that. So yeah, I'm really proud of them. But that is what you're seeing. You're seeing kind of a summary of the CPR element of the first aid and CPR training.
I know, it's certainly encouraged, no matter what country you're watching from, to try and get your version of this training, because it can save a life. You probably won't break down in tears like that young boy seems to be doing, because Kristen's been marching you to her tune of Staying Alive. But just I can't quite remember, because I've done my CPR training. I've done it on several occasions because it was a part of first aid and we needed to redo it. But is it, you need to get about a third of the way, like through the body? Is that the depth that you need to get to?
Yes, and God forbid anyone ever has to do this on someone. It's not pretty. However, CPR, actually, if someone has or is in the drowning process and they're pulled out of the water, starting CPR on them increases their chance of surviving by 50%. And you're right, it is a third. That's the way I was taught. It obviously depends on a few factors, if they are bleeding or anything like that, whether you do breaths. But often a sternum or a rib or two is broken in the process of CPR.
Yeah. I remember being told that, and then I remember the subsequent sentence being a cracked rib or a cracked sternum is better than death, basically.
Yes.
So that's the force required to actually push into these dummies is quite a lot, which it's not surprising that a young kid who probably weighs about 20 kilos can't quite get the force. Although the young boy is doing well. Maybe it's the Slurpees or the ices that you've given him have some special sugar in them or something, helping him push all the way through.
Yeah. And it's always a little trick. A bit of sugar never hurts. But it's quite scary, considering that last September a statement saying that drownings had been the highest they'd been in 25 years for the year of two, with our horrific floods that we've experienced. There is a percentage of deaths from that. However, that's a lot. In 25 years for 2022 to have the highest level of drownings, it's horrific. From memory, gosh, forgive me, out of that percentage or total for 2022, I believe it was around the 43 people died due to the floods. But at the end of the day, a drowning involves water. And then that statistic coming out in September, ahead of the Bush to Beach camp and ahead of our 2023 summer, was quite horrific. And it just shows that this simple skill, by increasing the percentage or, the I guess probability of someone living by 50%. Oh, that's why I'm so passionate about it. And it should be in our high school curriculum here in Australia, let alone in the world. It's like if you do the certificate, it's only like an hour, max 2, if you do like the advanced one. And these skills, they retain in your brain like the skills on how to ride a bike. It just becomes second nature. And God forbid you ever have to use it. But if you did have to, you feel capable, you feel confident, and you know you can help that person, which is invaluable. 2 hours of your time versus having that feeling in a situation that we hope you never are in. But if you are, knowing you can help, that is just, that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I've seen it and I've witnessed, and it's scary. But this innate response within you kind of kicks in after having that proper training of knowing how to help someone. And I know a lot of people around me who have had to perform CPR.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm so grateful for that training I had to do 6 years ago when I did my hospitality something. Like it just stays with you. I hope you do refresher courses and don't leave it for 6 years, but it's an innate response to help another human being. And why wouldn't you want to harness yourself with those skills, especially considering how many waterways and oceans we are blessed here to have in Australia?
Yeah, I think, well, in our country, you definitely need it because so many of us, I think 90% of Australia lives right on the ocean. So I don't know how many other countries can really sort of relate to that because, like, for example, America is as big as us, but, a large part of it is sort of inland. So they don't quite have that beach culture that we do. But you're absolutely right when it comes to retaining the information because I remember I was a bit skeptical about whether I'd be able to retain the information the first time I took a first aid course. And I remember back when I took it, it was going through the CPR process and they had an acronym for us. It was ABC. It was airways, breathing, circulation. And then it became ABCD. Now it's DRA, Dr. ABCD. And I can't say I remember like all the bits and pieces, but I remember the general gist, like seeing the dummy and then the pistol grip to pull the chin down and then to do the breaths. And it was interesting for me doing refresher courses, how they kind of updated it every 2 or 3 years to the latest information that was best proven to make a difference. But that entire first aid course, that only took 2 days. So I think it would be amazing to have something like that in high school, just as, I mean, it could help save a life. So, I mean, are there any plans that you're aware of to bring something like that into our school curriculum?
Not that I know of. I'm hoping through motivation. I'm motivating our
A
youth
giant
to
stick?
to kind of go on their own and get those certifications after my workshop. The benefit as well to, this kid, the 15, 16-year-olds who are applying for their first job, if they have on their resume that they have first aid and CPR training, they're going to be picked over a kid that doesn't. Workplaces see it as a very valuable asset for young people to have because it's less likely to be a liability. And that's kind of the angle that I've been targeting the high school kids with. It's like, look, this is just a workshop. But if you go and do this and get it on your resume, that job you want at Osmosis, that job you want at the water park, that job you want maybe is working with the life-saving clubs if you are in Sydney where it's a profession. It just opens so many doors. And not only that, it makes you feel so much more confident. When I found it's made me feel more confident when I'm swimming myself. And if someone is on the beach or someone's out there and they do have a little bit of trouble, it gives you kind of like a peace of mind, so to speak, that you'd be able to help to the best of your ability.
I mean, it's not even necessarily water-related occupations where that first aid certificate can come in very useful because a lot of workplaces now, they mandate that at least one of the people on duty needs to have a first aid certificate. So no matter what job you're going for, it's useful. And then, as you said, just having that peace of mind to know that if something, God forbid, happens, that what to do. And you know, your job is not to, I think a lot of people panic when they are hit with the thought of, oh, I'd be the responsible one when, someone keels over or someone is pulled out of the ocean. But I think having the knowledge is only beneficial. Being that one who could make a difference, and like yourself, because I went through the courses. Any number of the instructors or even the people who were there had their stories of times they'd had to do CPR, saved people's lives, and I have my own story with that as well. And you just never know when it's going to come into handy. But I would say it would be so good to get it into school, because then I would assume that the school could cover the cost of it, is the thing, because it does cost a couple of $100 at least. And if you're a teenager or a young gun at school, at high school, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for anyone in the current economic climate. So to just offer it through school, the practical education is something I'm really big on. That, especially in a country like Australia, any country, learning the practical steps to be able to save a life, I think would be huge. So if you could get that into school, I don't know what your plans are apart from Miss World Australia, Miss World, and then having a job. But if you have spare time on your hands, maybe you could help get it into schools.
Yeah, well, that's the plan at the end of the day. And I truly believe that this project can go internationally. It's, as I've said before, it's a universal skill, knowing how to save a life. It's the same in every language. It's a series of actions. And so I believe that this is a project that can really impact a lot of people. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I do want to take it internationally. And it's going to be a matter of making my voice heard, but also those who have worked with me in these workshops being like, hang on a minute, we need this. And it's, I think, going to be a collective effort in order to make it within the Australian high school curriculum, let alone internationally. I feel really privileged being able to speak about it on an international level through the Miss World Beauty with a Purpose platform. However, I will keep pushing. I will keep pushing to make this project very well known, and I want Educate Resuscitate to be ringing in everyone's ears very loud and clear. So that is my absolute passion, and I believe in it, and I believe in the principles and the values of my project.
I know that Miss World has a talent section. I wonder if anyone has actually performed CPR for the talent section. Bring out that dummy and go clack, 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 all dressed up, glammed in here. I mean, it probably wouldn't go so well with the lipstick, but that would be a very useful talent.
Yes, yeah, I think it's a talent. I think it's a talent that a lot of people possess. They just haven't unlocked it yet. So
Be interesting to be saved by a beauty pageant queen. Speaking of pageants, how's the prep going? So we've had the announcement today that it's going to be somewhere in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. You're betting on Dubai. I would split my bets between Dubai and Doha. I mean, those are really the only two cities that I've been to, because I transit through them when I'm flying. When any of us Aussies fly anywhere, we have to transit through Dubai or Doha. But now that we have a more definitive location, and we know it's happening sometime in May, which is only 3 months away, and then World itself takes the better part of a month. So it's a serious time commitment. Tell me, how is the prep going, and how are you feeling?
I feel excited. There are so many elements to Miss World that I'm excited about. Not only all of the fast tracks, but meeting the other contestants, meeting Mrs. Morley herself, and hearing about the work she's done, seeing the country, the activities, and being able to celebrate, I think, the work that every single contestant has done to get there is going to be a really beautiful moment. And something about Miss World that I feel has really solidified within me and has kind of directed my prep, so to speak, is the view of Miss World is that it's not about us as individuals, it's about the impact that we can make as a collective by creating these projects that can positively impact communities, states, countries. So to me, I see the Miss World Festival as a celebration of that, and a collective body coming together with the same mindset of wanting to help others. In terms of the legitimate prep, I'm most excited for talent. I am performing a talent that I don't believe has ever been performed at Miss World, so I'm really excited to share that. I'm excited for fitness because it's a big part of who I am. I've always been a sporty kid, so I'm excited to see what the fitness challenge kind of has in store for us, whether it's track and field or if we're, celebrating one of the sports that the UAE love, like soccer. We could be playing a soccer game, or football for the international people watching. I'm sorry. Yep. And I am really excited for Beauty with a Purpose, of course, and the head-to-head challenge as well will be so lovely to kind of sit down and speak about not just who we are as individuals, but our projects, and then further speak about the country that we're in, really promoting it and getting to highlight what makes it special, which I'm very excited for. So overall, as I've said about 10 times, I'm excited.
Hard to tell.
I feel good though. Like it takes a lot to get me stressed, which I'm very lucky about. And I think as well, something that I am proud of is that what you see is what you get with me. Through this whole process, I have been myself, and I have stayed true to myself and true to my beliefs and my values. And so coming into the international competition, I've done everything I can. This is me, and I'm just excited to celebrate all of the work, not only that I've done, but the other contestants.
Let me paint a picture for you, Kristen. So you go over there in May, you blow the world away, and crowning moment goes to you. You get that crown placed on your head. What does Kristen do then, apart from probably bawling? I mean, your reaction at Miss World Australia was quite hysterical. So I imagine at Miss World it would only be worse, although I'd call it better, but you'd probably think of it as worse. But how would you take what you're doing already, which is incredible work? How would you take that and make it even bigger and better if you were fortunate enough to have that piece of hardware placed on your head?
Oh gosh.
And don't tell me you haven't thought about it. I know you would have.
I think it's natural for everyone to think about it, because we're all going, I see Miss World as not a pageant, but as a job. I see it as a humanitarian-based job where you're impacting lives across the entire world with positive work. And to answer your question, firstly, I think I'm going to be in utter shock. Probably white as a ghost. And in my head, I'll probably be telling myself, keep your Aussie bogan in, don't let it seep out, and keep composed. Theoretically, I think that's what I would be telling myself. But if I'm being honest, if given that platform, I see it as an opportunity to take Educate, Resuscitate internationally, but I also see Miss World as the person who represents not only her own projects, but the projects of every single contestant and woman that's standing behind you. And at the end of the day, it's actually not about us as individuals. And it's not, if crowned, I wouldn't see it as about me. I would see it as kind of, okay, I've been chosen to be the vessel for this year to celebrate and communicate the values that all of us have within us, and to spread as much good as I can. That's kind of the way I see it and how I feel I would use and elevate the platform, because I see it as a job, and it's a big job. But it's a very privileged job, being able to speak to and help people across the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because you would be representing the entire, let's call it, class of 2022 or 2023. And I know you're going to meet a lot of amazing women, and you're going to hear about a lot of amazing projects based on a lot of amazing advocacies, and each one of our countries has its own unique challenges. And if you can bring us that bit closer together by working on them and representing them, that would be absolutely amazing. Have you had an opportunity to get to know any of your sister contestants as yet?
Yes, I have. I've been messaging back and forth with quite a few countries, so I can't wait to give them a big squeeze when I see them. Because
You mean a hug,
you
right?
just,
Not trying to choke the life out of them.
of
You mean a
course.
hug, right? Okay.
Oh,
Can't wait to
bless.
give them a
Bush to
big
Beach kids.
squeeze.
The Bush to Beach kids called it a squeeze by the end. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're little. But I hope the contestants, it's going to be surreal to kind of see them in person. And I know that I've obviously seen them on social media, but I think just that in-person meeting where your souls recognize each other and you're there for the same purpose, it's, I think, going to be quite surreal, and I feel like potentially it could get quite emotional, just because it's been so, we've been waiting a while, and I just think it's going to be quite surreal. But I have been talking to quite a few countries, and the work that they're doing is absolutely incredible. And I've loved hearing their stories, not only of just their Miss World stories, but getting to know their personal stuff as well, their families, their hobbies, their interests, because at the end of the day, we're just human. We're all just people, and that's what connects us.
Do you have any idea when do they announce roommates? Because sometimes pageants announce them a bit earlier on, but also sometimes pageants tend to organize the same countries together, maybe because they speak English or they're from the same region or something like that. I know one other pageant would continually put, I think it was New Zealand with Australia, which obviously makes sense. Do you know anything about the history of who Australia generally rooms with?
I must say I haven't really looked into it, because this year I'll take any. I'm happy to be with any of the lovely ladies. I believe the previous Miss World Australia, Sarah, was with, I want to say USA, maybe? USA?
Okay.
And then potentially before that was New Zealand. But I'm not sure when they will be announcing it. But I hope so soon, so I can, we can start organising, and you bring a steamer, I'll bring a curler.
I have this mental image of you now as some giant boa constrictor going around and suffocating all these people.
Because I'm wearing green. Is it the green dress?
It's partly that as well, which I have to say really, really suits you. I love that color. You have a question here from a certain Miss Rankin. I give Brooke so much grief. It's amazing that she actually speaks to me. But from Brooke, so she said, "My girl, the Miss World crown needs you. How will you bring Educate, Resuscitate to light on an international platform?" And she's trying to get Goss here, Brooke. Also, National Costume Hunt. He. So proud of you. So 2 questions there. Educate, Resuscitate on an international platform, and then National Costume Hunt.
International platform for Educate Resuscitate would be travelling to different schools in different countries and doing first aid and CPR workshops, and further trying to implement it in not only the Australian curriculum but also on an international level of high school curriculum, and making that training accessible to everyone, because again, it's a skill to save a life, and it's universal. And I believe in the foundations of the project that I can take it on that international level and implement it in the furthest areas of the world. So that would be kind of the next steps proceeding forward. I would start by whichever city we are in for Miss World. I would start by going to those schools. And I don't think language is going to be a barrier for the Educate Resuscitate project, let alone the seminars, because it's all action. It's all kind of demonstrating what to do, not necessarily speaking through. Yes, it
Yeah.
helps, and I'm sure in the areas we can work out translators, or I would try my best to learn as much much of the local language as I can. But it's such a action, I guess. It's more action than speaking. So that's why I also
Yeah.
feel that I could very easily kind of implement it on an international curriculum based kind of standard. And then national costume. I do have a national costume. It's very on theme, if that gives away any hints. And it's probably like one of my favorite colors as well, if that gives you another hint.
I know that when you were in, it was Vietnam, wasn't it, where you spent a good deal of time with Brooke, Miss Global
Yeah.
Australia. I have to ask, did you ever put her name at the end of the sentence? Because I now just keep badgering her about how much she hates having her name put at the end of a sentence. Did you ever do that?
I didn't. You
That's so
know,
disappointing.
now though you've put it in my head. Brooke and I, for those of you who aren't familiar with where I'm from, I live in Victoria, and so does Brooke. And we have Melbourne CBD, then two sides of the peninsula. We've got the Mornington Peninsula, then kind of the Geelong region. We're both opposite on the peninsula. So when we're meeting, and it's about a good 2.5 hour drive. So Brooke and I are hoping to meet up in the city shortly for a girls' lunch and a catch up, because she's also she's done amazing things, and she's also going to be passing on the crown soon, I believe, for her title.
April.
So yeah, so it's all happening. So we are organising a catch up. But yes, she was my roommate in Vietnam when we did the Skin 02 trip. Got along like a house on fire. I think I was laughing so hard at one point, I maybe snorted. So if that gives you any idea of how we kind of merged, that she's a beautiful soul. Beautiful soul.
How much would you charge me to put her name at the end of every sentence when you meet up? Okay, you don't need to answer that one. I just, because Brooke is handing over in April the Global Australia title, and I just said only half jokingly that I would go, not so much to watch the pageant, but just to meet her in person and just keep putting her name at the end of every sentence. I am such a lovely person. Look at Brooke, she's saying Adrian, pushing it. Well, look, Kristen won't put your name at the end of a sentence, even though I'm offering, I'm bribing her to do it. So Kristen is a true friend, right? True queen, sister queen. Anyway, Kristen, you've done so much since we last chatted. Is there anything else that we've neglected to mention? It's just hard to keep track of it because you've done so much.
Yeah. I am a busy bee. It's probably that voice of my friend in my ear being like, don't stop now, like you've got too much to do. And I guess I do have quite a few projects coming up still in the lead up to Miss World, but also scheduled for after Miss World. And the best way to keep up to date with that is through my Instagram, Kristen A. Wright, as well as Mobster. And you can actually head to my website that I've created, and I am constantly updating it myself. That is www.kristenawright.com. I have updates happening regularly there, usually within 48 hours if I've done an event or something like that. And there's a lot of updates coming to that website with the Bush to Beach camp and kind of behind the scenes work. Oh, that's really cool. Hey, you can have it up while we're talking. And
this before, this is not my first interview. I have done this before. You sound so surprised.
It's like, it's because I can see it as well. So of the website, there's all different sections. You've got about, so a little bit about me, And then the Miss World Australia section is kind of more pageanty. We have the Educate, Resuscitate project, how you can get involved, as well as donate to the causes that align with my project, like the Royal Life Saving Australia, as well as St John's Ambos. Then we've got charities and fundraising. So volunteer work has always been an integral part of who I am as an individual. So I've worked with a variety of charities through my youth, but currently I'm mainly working with Bush to Beach and Variety the Children's Charity, as well as the two I mentioned before that the funds from my Educate Resuscitate store go to, which is the funds from the Yellow Bow. However, for the month of February, all of the profits from the Yellow Bow, instead of going to their usual places of donations, 100% of the profits are being donated to assist with the horrific natural disaster that Turkey is experiencing in Syria. It's absolutely devastating what has happened and the amount of people who've lost their lives. And we will never know such things here in Australia. We are really lucky in that sense. And so I'm just trying to do my bit. And there's been quite a few sales, so I really appreciate everyone supporting this incredible cause. There's also a direct donations link just there, the pink, the donate now button, which takes you, if you won't click on it, it takes you to a trusted donations website where you know your funds are going directly to help those on hand and on foot trying to help during this disaster.
Yeah. I was saying whilst you were off air that, I mean, Australia has its fair share of natural disasters such as bushfires and the recent floods, but that loss of life on that scale is something, thankfully, that we've never had to contend with in this country.
No, and we didn't do anything special to have Australia be perfectly in the center of a tectonic plate. It was pure luck. So we do have our share of disasters, but nothing of this scale, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think Australia is in more ways than one definitely the lucky country. I think during COVID, for the most part, I was very thankful to be living in Australia. You maybe not so much, given what happened in Melbourne and Victoria, I don't know, but I was certainly very thankful to be living in Australia during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, well, I think we've covered everything. We've dealt with a little bit of a technical hiccup. Just before we move to the end, is there anything, dare I ask, that we haven't covered yet? And I say dare I ask because I don't want to tempt the tech gods to kick us off again.
I think there's going to be a lot more to cover in the next coming months. But as I mentioned before we cut out, those are the best ways to keep up to date with all my little projects.
Okay, so Instagram or your website. And it's nice to see a pageant queen that actually has a website. It's good. It's good to see that.
Mobstar as well.
And
that's the dedicated app that the Miss World platform uses.
And you can download that off the App Store, I'm assuming?
Yes. Yeah, it's like a gold label Mobstar.
Perfect. All right. Just before I run you through the final 10 questions for the second time, I don't remember any of your answers for the first time, but maybe they will come back. Obviously, it was very memorable. Is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to for supporting you?
Oh, where do I start? My family and friends have been the biggest beacon of light during all this prep and my crazy ideas that I put up with. I of course want to thank my mum. She has been a big inspiration for me from when I was little, really instilling within us that to always show kindness and to believe in yourself and you know, I owe a lot to my mum. My dad as well for kind of instilling the grit within me and to work hard, and then my beautiful siblings, Kyle and Kate, my gorgeous friends, and yourself as well. I have a really beautiful network of people around me who just make me feel uplifted and spirited, and they help keep my spirit alive and remind myself of the reason of why I do things and the reason of why I am Miss World Australia, let alone competing for Miss World. And my heart feels so full of love. So that would be my shout out.
That was something I didn't know about you. Did you say you had 2 siblings and their names are Kyle and Kate?
We all start with K's, like the Kardashians.
What happened there?
I think so. We were all surprises. I have an older brother, Kyle, and then a younger brother, Caitlin. We thought Kate was going to be a boy because Mum and Dad didn't want to find out the gender. And the beautiful nurse doing the ultrasound, when she was giving Mum an ultrasound, she goes, "Oh, there he is." So instantly Mum and Dad thought she slipped up.
Yeah.
We bought everything kind of boy orientated. We had like passed down toys from Kyle, like Kate's name was going to be Liam, all good to go. She pops out. I remember Dad picking my brother and I up from primary school being like, we got to go to Kmart, we got to get something pink or yellow or something. And then they were always tossing up names, like her middle name's Mia, and they're like, "Oh, Mia," or Caitlin with a C, and then it just happened. They're like, let's keep the K trend. So then she got Caitlin with a K.
Did your dad go to Kmart to buy the change of clothes?
We literally did.
My God. Jeez.
But that nurse,
All right.
I think that nurse did a little cheeky one on my parents. I reckon she did it on purpose now to throw them off.
Oh, maybe, or maybe she just made a mistake. I mean, they are, sometimes so overworked. But yeah, no, 3 siblings or 3 children, all beginning with K, and then you went to shopping at Kmart. That's a story. So I feel like I've learned something about you that I didn't know before. Anyway, let's go through the final 10 questions for the second time and see if we come up with any of the same answers or any of them ring a bell. So the first question is, what is your favorite word?
Communication. I'm a sucker for good communication. That's why I'm studying what I am through, and in the hopes of, instilling it within more people, because effective communication goes a long way.
Number 2, what is your least favorite word?
Hate. I think it's so strong to hate something. I think dislike is a much more like neutral or not as a cursive word, so to speak.
Number 3, in life, what gets you excited or what turns you on?
You know that butterfly feeling when you're nervous to go towards a new goal and it's kind of your body being like, don't know about this? That is what fuels my fire, because I know it's something new that I'm not used to, and I have to suss it out.
That's you in a nutshell, have to suss it out. So that was what turns you on. Question 4, what turns you off?
Hearing other people talk poorly about themselves, that really hits me on a soul level. When I hear people kind of talk down or talk poorly towards themselves, I really don't. It really gets me, like it hurts my soul hearing someone speak negatively about themselves.
Question 5, what sound or noise do you love?
I love music. I also love, the bell at a restaurant when your food's coming. Those would be my top 2.
Wouldn't be a pageant interview if I could get through without talking about food once, but you snuck it in there. Question 6, what sound or noise, I was going to say do you hate, but let's say do you dislike, since you don't like the word hate?
Good, yeah. little dogs yapping. The little dog yap. It's not a big dog bark because I'm a big dog girl. I love
Yeah.
big dogs. The little dog bark.
Yep. I'm not a fan of little dogs. Sorry, all of you pageant girls who have little dogs. They yap, yap, yap. I was playing tennis today, and two of them were chasing me off, like around the court, yapping, yapping, yapping at my heels. And I just felt like saying, you don't want to find out how far I can kick you. Not that I would do that, but it was just so annoying. And the owners don't discipline them, so that's why they get away with it.
There's two yapping right now. Don't know if you can hear that.
We'll fly over there to teach them a lesson. But let's move on. Question 7. If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
I'd love to have the power of giving others a different perspective of situations. So say if they're kind of quite tunnel visioned in a negative situation, being able to kind of gift them with, hang on a minute, let's take a step back and really acknowledge the situation for what it is, or potentially even see into the future. That would be kind of cool to kind of be like, hang on a minute, if you go this far, this is the outcome. But I think we're so harsh on ourselves, and I think it can be of high value when you can kind of give someone an insight into a different perspective of a situation. There's always a reason why people are the way they are, let alone the way that they act. And when you can kind of look for the reason behind that, it usually has less of a blow, or it's not really that much of a bigger deal. So I would hope to give people that insight.
Question 8. What job other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Kind of want to try, like, be an astronaut. Like, I've gone that way. I kind of want to go that way.
Such a minor goal. Yeah, I just want to fly into space. I wonder if you'd be the first pageant queen in space. I know there was at least one pageant queen who, I think it was a Miss Universe Island, who worked for NASA, but I can't remember if she actually went into space, but that would be something. Number 9, what job would you definitely not like to attempt?
I feel like, I wouldn't be a very good policewoman. And the reason behind it is because I don't think I could detach my humanitarian instinct from the cases, and I would be too involved emotionally.
That's a fair thought. All right, final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would love to see a scrapbook and him show me the portraits of those that my work has helped. Because I know if it is true and if you believe in it, I know when I get there I'm going to be just as critical of myself as I am down here. So I feel like that would be really kind of beautiful to have, like a. Can you imagine getting to the gates and him being like, here, and it's a scrapbook with detailing of the lives that you've impacted during your life here on Earth? I think that would be so wow.
I just think it's funny that you're going to get to heaven and you're still going to be critical of yourself. I think the way it works is when you get to heaven, you become slightly different, but who knows? I mean, I haven't been there before, so your guess is as good as mine. And a bonus question I have to ask, because I asked this before our interview. How many pillows does a girl need on her bed before it's too many?
Well, okay.
And how many do you have behind you presently?
I've got 2 European pillows, which are the big square ones, if you don't know. They're awesome for when you're like watching a movie or something like that, because they kind of prop you up. Then I've got two standards, which when I'm sleeping make like a barricade around me. And then the front two are useless, but the other ones I use.
But if the front two are useless, why are they on your bed?
Because they look cute. They go with it.
Never understood why some people have so many pillows on their bed that there's literally no space to actually sleep on the bloody thing. But I guess
it's well, it's what I said before. We have a lot of pillows because we don't want to go to something else.
Fair enough. Well, Kristen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you for the second time. You're doing amazing work. You should be so proud, and wish you best of luck in the UAE, whether it's Dubai, Doha, something else beginning with another D, or whatever it happens to be. And I'm sure you're going to represent our country to the best of your abilities and make us all proud.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you for your kind words, and thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure chatting to you, and I appreciate your support. I really do.
It's a pleasure. Well, I will keep you on the line whilst I hang up with our audience, which has very diligently hung on through our technical struggles. So thank you to you. Shout out to you guys. I'll keep Kristen on the line for just a sec whilst I hang up with you guys. But thanks to everyone for watching, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Sorority Access is now open. So if you'd like to join an amazing group of women and learn how to be the most powerful, confident, and impactful queen possible, head to thepageantsorority.com. I'll see you there, and see you in the next video.